All right, if we could quiet down in here. I know it's not the most comfortable situation back there. I apologize. We'll see what we can do about some more chairs. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about the air conditioning in here, but we're going to get started. It's the Arlington Redevelopment Board meeting for July 22nd, 2019. ACMi is recording, and at least 2 members of the audience have let me know that they're going to be recording tonight as well. First on our docket is EDR review for 1207, 1211 Massachusetts Avenue. Just to give you an idea of the process, we're going to allow the proponent to speak first. Then the town will have an opportunity to present its findings. The board will ask questions, and at that point, we'll open it up for public comment. Please hold your comments, questions, utterances, anything until that section is open. Everyone who wants to have a chance to speak will be given the opportunity to do so. This is our usual process for special permit hearings, but I see a lot of new faces in the crowd tonight, so I thought I'd review how that process works. So with that being said, I'm going to open docket 3602, public hearing for 1207, 1211 Mass Ave. I will ask the proponents to stand up, introduce themselves, and please begin your presentation.
Good evening, my name is Ken Ingber, along with Mary Lou Stanley O'Connor, my law partner. We are representing Jim Doherty, who is the project proponent. He's sitting here. Along with us is Greg McIntosh, a principal of Lincoln Architects of Winchester. And we are here to describe the project on Mass Ave, 1207 and 1211 Mass Ave, a proposed mixed-use project. The location itself, as you know, 1207 is the former DAV facility, has been closed for some time. That's in a B2 zoning district. Also attached to that is 1211 Mass Ave, which is currently in auto use on the first floor, and there's a one 3-bedroom apartment above that. And that is primarily from a visual standpoint. You see a dozen or so cars strewn about in front right on Mass Ave. The proposed project is a mixed-use project consisting of a hotel, a boutique hotel with 50 rooms, and an upscale restaurant containing 2,568 square feet. The purpose of this hearing is to request a special permit, and the ARB is the special permit granting authority because it does require environmental design review under section 3.4, both it's on Mass Ave, it's a hotel, and it's a mixed use. I'd like to say at the beginning here that this project arises out of a request for proposal that was delivered on what to do with the DAV, and that request for proposal was in turn intended to propel this area for mixed use, to advance the purposes of the master plan, to advance development of this kind along certain corridors, Mass Ave being the principal one. So we're here for requesting a special permit, and we are specifically also asking for relief in 3 categories where the zoning bylaw specifically permits that. The first one is under section 5.5.17. There is a requirement for step back. And the way the bylaw is presented is if you've got a 4-story project, and this is a 4-story project, the bylaw requests that the top 2 floors be stepped back by 7.5 feet. We think we have, our proposal exceeds what is required in the sense that we are proposing a step back of 8.5 feet rather than 7.5 feet on both the first floor and the 4th floor. Greg is going to talk a little bit more about the design that goes into that, but the point that I want to emphasize is that the step back, we are providing a step back in terms of the total area and then some, beyond what the minimum is required under the bylaw, but we're doing it in a way that exceeds the what a literal application would be, which is to say, if you're looking to break up a mass, a single monolithic kind of facade, that's the point of the step back as I understand it, and that was the way it was presented to town meeting, and I think that's the general understanding. By stepping back on the first floor and the fourth floor, you have more of a visual breakup on that, so it meets the intention of the bylaw and does it, I think, in a more effective way. The ARB has the authority to grant us that relief. The second aspect of relief that we're requesting is a number of parking spaces. The bylaw requires one parking space for each hotel room. There are 50 rooms, so 50 parking spaces. There's also one parking space for every 400 square feet for a restaurant, but the bylaw provides for an exclusion of the first 3,000 square feet, so we are left with 50 parking spaces per the bylaw. There is no function room or meeting room inside a hotel. It's just rooms and first floor lobby, so there's no additional parking requirements there. And there is going to be a significant transportation demand plan. Mr. Doherty has been talking with staff about that, and for purposes of this hearing, which I think is more a meet and greet than anything else, I think it's probably premature to get into the details of the parking, but we are asking for a reduction in that parking. We think that the various elements that we're going to propose, we have talked to staff about that in terms of how we're going to deal with parking, emphasis on bicycles, emphasis on tour groups, I think justifies a reduction because this project will not need the maximum number of parking spaces that's required. There's also the third element under section 5.3.6. The floor area ratio required is 1.5. Under the zoning bylaw, if there is a requirement of 1.2 or greater, then the ARB can grant up to a 25% increase, and that would be a 1.875 floor area ratio. We're asking for just a modest increase of 1.67 of that. So the lot area is 14,030 square feet, and we are looking to have a project of 23,443 square feet. The maximum relief that we could ask for, that the ARB is entitled to grant, would be 26,000 and change. We're asking for 23,000 and change. So those are the three areas. I think we can defer talking about the dozen criteria under the special permit until later. I'd like Greg McIntosh to present the architectural design itself. I think it would be beneficial to have the staff review of this project first, and then we can turn back to the criteria if that makes sense to you.
It's fine.
Greg?
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg McIntosh from Lincoln Architects. Our office is located in 1 Mount Vernon Street in Winchester. We've been in business for just under 20 years. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak before you tonight, and I wanted to thank you for that. With that, I'd like to get into the presentation. I'd like to start you off on this street right here. Stick this in. Takes a second. Apparently it's not working. Well, I'd like to start you off with the introductory board in any event. This board represents the existing conditions as they are at present based off of Google Earth imagery. The private social club was right here. The apartment and the automobile use is right here. And getting back to the previous comments regarding the amount of vehicles that are in that particular area. It's important to point out, in my perspective, where the buildings are sited in relationship to the other buildings in the area. So that's our starting point. And with that, I'd like to flip over to our next image, which is very similar to this, but but there is one difference in this. You'll see a shaded hatched area here, and this is locating the first floor and lower level footprint on the site. I'd just like to point out to you a couple of features. It maintains this sight line all across the front of the building, so it's going to be consistent with our existing to remain buildings. In addition to that, it's leaving the back portion of the site more open against the residential community. I think that that's an important point to make in all of this. Just to provide a buffer. This right here is the engineered site plan. It basically puts the building on the surveyed site, and it shows the parking that is out back, and it shows that distance I was just referring to in that other sequence. This came from Medford Surveying and Engineering. I'd like to draw your attention now to the site plan. It's basically showing the parking area. We are maintaining the trees, obviously, that are on the butter's property, which is some pretty large growth back there. In addition to that, we are planting a buffer, and we're maintaining as much green space as we can. And looking at what Jim and I had gone through with the design efforts, is when you look at the amount of planting that's added through here and the buffer that's 5 feet along there is going to be some exterior lighting. All this is going to be of the low variety, and it's going to be of the cutoff variety, so it doesn't intrude on the butters in the background. This is an exterior canopy on the upper level. One point I'd like to make about the step back, which is I think an important criteria, is that actually the lowest level of this is subterranean to Massachusetts Avenue. So when you look at it, it doesn't carry as tall on Massachusetts Avenue in terms of those particular issues. The lower level here is the lobby portion. It's going to share a common toilet core, common kitchen to the restaurant, and it's as efficient and as slimmed down as possible. These outdoor areas are going to be intended for outdoor seating and a place for people to congregate and have a dialogue with the building, basically, and it's an outdoor gathering area. This is the lowest level, the area I was referring to that was subterranean to Massachusetts Avenue. We have quite a large mechanical space, an exercise room, bicycle storage. It's important to point out that bicycle storage is going to come in a lot of varieties. It's going to come in the varieties that are grade-oriented, where you don't have to lift the bike off of that. But it's all going to be some racks, and it's going to be both inside and outside. And we're working very diligently to comply with the number of units required to meet the spirit of the regulations. The other portion of the lower area is going to be the back of the house for the hotel facility, the laundry, the elevator core, and emergency egress stairs and things of that nature, and the elevator machinery. So it's going to be an exercise room, a bicycle storage room, and then mechanical spaces. The whole inside is covered exterior parking. This is a larger scale version of the main floor level. And again, this is at street level on Massachusetts Avenue. Some other features of the design indicate a recess into the curb cut we're proposing. This allows for the drop off at vehicles and things like that to become more seamless and not disrupt traffic. And there's still plenty of room because we stepped the building back. There's still plenty of room to get this in and maintain a generous sidewalk on that side.
How wide is the sidewalk?
It's going to be at least 8 feet. That's minimum. Right there.
If I could just, so currently that sidewalk from the outside of the curb to the property line is almost 10 feet. So it's going to be almost 5 and 5.
Oh, it's going to be 5 and 5, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Greg's point being the additional space to actually really get to the patio on the property is much wider, but the actual sidewalk itself there, even after that cutting, will be about 5 feet. It's like 4.5 to 5 feet.
This is your typical mid-level of the building where hotel rooms reside. This is your typical hotel configuration for the second and third floors. I've done a lot of work in the hospitality industry with Marriott and Holiday Inn Express, and you take what's common between all these and the brands that they have, and you work out the spacing with that. And so this is what we're going to be having for the second and third floor. The upper level has a larger unit where they have a double queen set up as opposed to a single king. This is stepped back, the 8.5 feet. There will be an exterior space there for a rooftop garden and a gathering spot for the residents or the guests, so to speak, in that area. Again, our vertical circulation that I ran for remote use of egress. Our building facade is taking on the following characteristics. This is the Massachusetts Avenue portion. Am I blocking the camera?
Yes.
Okay, let me get over here. Sorry about that. Sorry. Basically, the design intention for this was that I want the lower level to have a direct dialogue with the street. And that's why we have an aluminum curtain wall system for the restaurant and lobby areas to make it as open as possible, create a connection between these two middle areas right here are where those more standard king rooms are located. And of course, this upper level is where those double queens are located. The stair towers are defined with this grayish material here. That's a 410 steel, and that's how the vertical circulation is being defined on the building facade at that point. We're going to be employing a synthetic wood planking system. It's a clay type of material that, similar to a brand name. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but Nichiha and a lot of the other ones. It's a range screen, and it's very durable. It's of high quality. And then we're going to have an exterior synthetic stucco system where you see the lighter colors. You'll notice the back portion here where we have the parking. We are definitely proposing replanting that back edge, and we plan on screening that back edge for the abutter's privacy. And as you can see, the building appears taller on the back than it does on the front. That's what I was referring to before, because this is basically a lower level is below the Massachusetts Avenue grade, because it does slope down going down Park Street. There will be some cuts required, but we can get that done. So that's basically the facade treatment. We will be screening any rooftop mechanical equipment, and that's noted right above that stairwell right there. The roof extends approximately 44 feet above Massachusetts Avenue. This is a street view from across Massachusetts Avenue. Again, highlighting the glass open nature of the first floor public spaces, the screening, synthetic stucco, the Nichiha. Corridors are getting natural light at the end. The outdoor gathering spaces off of each of the rooms up there will obviously be railed off for safety. The entries will be highlighted a bit lower with only signage right above the end of the canopies for that. And this gives you an idea of how the back is being dealt with. And it does slope down going down Park Street, and then it slopes down going down to the side. And that's how we're achieving that area below there. You've got outdoor lights. And this is a bird's eye view. One of the things that's important to note is we plan on generating the exhaust systems that are going to be required for all the bathrooms and mechanical equipment. Toward the back, you'll never see it from the street. If you look at these previous views, you can't see it from here. You can't see it from here. At the screening, you will see, but that's hiding it all. And that'll also serve as an acoustic louver as well, acoustic baffle as well, from the camera. And again, this gives you kind of a dynamic view for the walkway and the public interaction zones, and the rooftop zones as well. The last series of slides we have are relative to the shade studies. These are part of your package. If you have any questions, I'd like to address any of them. But they are somewhat self-explanatory. This is the summer solstice, and 6 p.m., 5 a.m., 3 p.m., 5, 12, 3, and 6. And the pattern repeats based off of that. This is the winter solstice, and obviously it's 6 p.m. in January when it started. So that's what that's showing you. This is the autumn equinox. Getting dark at the end, but those are the shadows that are cast. And then our last one is the spring equinox. So, that in a nutshell is our presentation. We've worked to try to be as sympathetic to the community as we can, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I have a number of questions, but I think I'll begin with Ken and let the board members go first.
All right, well, let me start off saying I'm supportive of this project. I think it would be nice to have in that area. But what you have presented here is very preliminary. It's very hard for us to make decisions on how this affects the neighborhood. All right, so I'm going to give you a list here. I'm going to spiel a bunch, but don't worry about it. I'm going to give this to the planning department. You can ask them for the copy, okay?
Go ahead.
Your existing conditions, you don't show much. You got to show more inclusive of the neighborhood. I want to show what's across the street, what's next door, and so forth, okay? And I don't want an aerial Google. I want some drawings, okay? You said those big trees back there, okay? Whose big trees are they? Are they yours, you're taking them down, or is the neighbors and keeping them up?
One on.
I'm not asking for answers right now, okay? Okay, because this is also, I want to show elevations. Show me elevations of the adjacent neighbors, especially on Mass Ave. Okay, across the street where the old pizza place used to be, the scale of that. You said you want to keep it in line with the front edge of the building. Well, this building next door, what are those lines? How are you matching up with it? Site plan, you got to show more contact. You got to show what the existing curb cuts are right now and what the proposed curb cuts are right now. Okay, I don't believe your drop-off lane works because there are existing power poles there right now. All right, and you said the curb cuts are 5 feet and 5 feet.
No.
I mean the drop-off loop.
The width.
The width of the drop-off loop. Okay. A car can't fit in 5 feet, so it's going to stick out in the street, right across the bicycle line. Okay. All right. Also, I think 5 feet and your planting bed is what you got. Yes, you do set the building back, but your plant bed's right on the property line, so you got 5 feet. So 2 people going by in a stroller is not going to work. Okay, so if you want to give it more generously, you might have to. I'm just saying it doesn't work right now. Okay. I'll get into all the, okay. You don't show how the building meets the sidewalk, the grading. Is the first floor the same as the sidewalk height? There's a slight slope from one side of the site to the other side of the site along Mass Ave. There's a much larger grade difference from Mass Ave going back in the site. You don't show anything like that at all. We need a couple of building sections. So does this sit on a plinth, and then you have your structure going above, so there's a couple of steps, and you need ramps, or is it flush? Don't know. Okay? And also, you should show someone what materials are the plaza, what the columns are, just whatever the whole system you plan to use. Your traffic demand study is not complete. I think the planning department already given you a couple of things that they're still requesting. If you can add that in, it'd be great. You have no landscaping plan. You have a planting schedule, yes. But I'd like to know how big the planting beds are, which way you have a drainage going toward it, what's existing. I'll go back to the trees again, not the trees again, and so forth. You can have some sort of irrigation system where it drains to a garden drain, where it'll filtrate some of the water back into the ground. Just some detail indication of what you want to do there. Your planters, you show me some details of your planters. All you show is this rectilinear perimeter and a bunch of plants there. What are the finishes? Can you sit on them? Are people going to ride by and put skateboard along the edge of it? Or is it real thin? Is it concrete? So let us know what that's going to be, because that's facing the public. Okay, on the lower level, you gotta show us the property line, where that is, especially where it meets and butts the adjacent building. Does the adjacent building have a basement or not? If the adjacent building has a basement, then you're gonna have to go as low as that existing basement, so you don't influence the flare of the structure. Okay.
May I respond to that one thing, just to clarify?
Sure.
The height of the abutting property that touches the common wall we currently have about 12 feet, but we have planned to address your concerns.
Okay.
I just want to let you know.
Can't tell.
No, I like the feedback.
So with that, on the first floor plan, please show the property line again, show your sidewalk, the adjacent building, any fencing you may have, any where the edge of your plantings go. It's not clear enough, okay? You show something, but it's not clear enough. I just want you to take the next step. I don't know what the structure you plan to use this is. Is this steel frame on a podium with wood frame above? Or just give me some indication, okay? I don't see any structure on the first floor plan. I see a couple of columns on the front. That was it. There's nothing inside there that shows me any structure whatsoever. Yeah, okay. So, just let me know, is it's going to be a steel building, a wood frame building?
Well, as you suggested, it's going to be a steel podium with wood frame above.
Okay.
But you can address that.
Yeah. Okay. On your elevations and on your plans, the window openings don't correlate. Okay. You have, on some of your plans, you don't show no windows, and on your elevation, you show windows. Or on your elevation, show windows, and your plans don't show any. Which is it? Just,
Based off the elevation.
yes. Okay. You're going to have a restaurant on the first floor. How are you going to vent that up? Is it going to be out the side, or is it going to go straight up through the roof? You show no shafts or any mechanical stuff on the side of the building. So is it going to be mechanical stuff out in the back, facing out the neighbors, or is it going to go straight up to the roof?
It's going to go through the roof.
Just show us some shafts and ductwork or what, I don't need you to design it, but just give an indication where it's going to go,
That's all.
Do you have access to the roof? Just, okay, on elevations, you should point out what materials are what. It's, you give a list on your, when you file, what all the different materials you're going to use. I prefer if you actually pointed to what's what on the elevation. It's more clear, okay? And then if you can, bring some samples in.
Okay.
Like a niche hop panel, that'd be great. I'm sure a lot of people don't know what that is. Are you planning to use some sort of wood niche hop panel? Is it going to be a plain panel, or is it going to be
It's
a
going to
rough?
have a wood grain to it,
Okay.
and it's going to be synthetic product. It's not going to be hardwood or anything like that.
Okay. Some detailing on railings. Is it, you show it's gonna be some sort of metal railing with wire? Is that what you're showing, or is it gonna be something else? I'm not asking you to give me answers now, I'm just, and then building sections. If you can give me 2 building sections, one across the lot, so we know where the sidewalk is, where it comes into the front of the building, then where the parking lot is, and where the parking below the ground floor is, so we know how that relates. I mean, when you drive into the back, does it go down in grade, or does it go up in grade? I can't tell. I don't think there's enough difference in height from the front of the lot to the back of the lot to have a full parking level.
It goes down, doesn't it? I understand.
You understand, right? Okay. And then, same thing, the section go across the other way with your adjacent neighbor showing the basement, or your best guess at where the basement is.
Sure.
All right? And then your renderings have to be a little more accurate. It's a little, it shows things not quite the scale I don't think it is. It's correct. Your sidewalks are wider than what it shows on the plans. Where it shows, the car fits in the drop off more closely. Just tune it up a little bit better, okay? Those are all the drawings. I have a couple design suggestions, if that's okay with you. I believe the egress stairs are too big. There are these 2 big massive blocks in the corner of the building. They're like a C shape. I mean, these are just egress stairs. If you use switchback stairs, I don't think the floor full height's that high. You should be able to do it. It'll make these big blocks much smaller. And then also, if you move these stairs in from the corner along your building face there, it allows you to have 2 more outside corners. And I think you should take advantage of the outside corners more by adding more windows. Right now you have a very expensive curtain wall right in the stairwell. I think you should take that and open up the corner of this building right here at the corner and add it to the rooms. I think you can have more value to the rooms, having big windows. And I know what you said about stacking horizontally, okay, making all the similar blocks. I challenge you to think the other way and stack it vertically and make those all the same. So the 4 corners are unique because they have 2 open sides that can look out. And then the inside ones where you don't, you only go one side or to the back, like that. I'm just suggestions, okay? It changes the architecture and the way the building is. Right now it's very clunky and it's very huge, massive loads at each end of the building. If you can pull those things in, open up the corners, it's going to feel lighter. It's going to add more value because now you have bigger windows. It's going to look more spacious. Your big suites upstairs, you only have 1 window at the end of the bedroom, right? You got to go through a sitting area, living room, with no windows to get to the bedrooms. You just imagine those suites at the corners, and then having more windows. Now you have some value there to these units, and it opens up the building and makes it a little smaller because you have glass at the corners, as opposed to these big, massive blocks. I would also highly recommend switching your restaurant and your reception area, flipping it on plans. Okay, right now you have the restaurant situated at the corner, but if you situate the reception at the corner, you can utilize the extra space you have in the back. Have a long edge there, which is where your reception is. Where you have a drop off instead of having it along Mass Ave. Just leave that alone as parking, and just have a drop off roof off the side street where you can drop off. I'm getting this is a suggestion, okay? I'm not saying these are. Okay.
I appreciate it, believe me.
This also gives you opportunity to get loading for the building off Mass Ave onto your property. On the drop off. Maybe off hours, you don't have to reload. There's a way to do the loading there. You can figure that, I'm sure you can. Okay. I also highly recommend, we have the trash dumpster right at the corner there. That's someone's house. I prefer if you move that trash dumpster back in the corner, way back in the corner on the other side, inside or in that corner there, so you don't have it next to somebody's house. Okay. Up above, we have your public roof garden. I commend you for that. That's a nice gesture. I suggest you maybe rotate it like 90 degrees so that the high portion that's not against the property line, when you move the stairs in, you can tuck the setback in. So there's a setback that's facing the neighbor that's a little lower. Okay. I'm not sure what's on the other side. You're gonna have to look at that. And your building is taller than the other building that was there before, right? So you're gonna have to take into account the snow loads now. The induced snow loads you're putting on your neighbor. So by having a setback there, it helps. Otherwise you're gonna have to put some sort of snow fence there.
Factor it in anything over 2 feet anyway. So.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying.
It's an issue we're gonna have to deal with.
You know what I'm saying, right? It helps.
Definitely, I do know what
Okay.
you're saying.
So, well, there's a little more. I want to give my other partners a chance to speak and say other things. I stayed away from actual finishes and design. I'm going to leave it to Rachel to help me with that there. I just want to get a few things in.
Sure.
For the next meeting, so we actually talk about some of these things coming up, okay? You said this was a preliminary, get to know. I'm just giving you a list of what I want to get to know. Okay.
Thanks, Ken. So I do think this is an ongoing dialogue. I don't think it's obvious that one board member has gone so far. I don't anticipate getting to a vote this evening. One of the things, I really appreciate you bringing a mixed-use project that's a little bit out of the box for Arlington to us. I think there's a lot of value to be added to the town. With a project like this, I think it's kind of an exciting commercial opportunity that we don't see a lot of on this board. But when we pitched mixed use to town meeting a few years ago and got it approved, one of the promises we made was that we wouldn't just rush into things and shoehorn buildings and projects in where they didn't necessarily fit. And so I'm generally supportive of this, but I have a lot of concerns that it will not have a hugely negative impact on the neighborhood and people who live there now. One of those, probably first and foremost,
Andrew, can you speak up?
is traffic control. This plot is really at kind of an interesting intersection, confluence of roads. I think one of the things that I'd like to see is a traffic study based on your anticipated demand, not only of guests at the hotel, but people off the street or from in town, wherever, who might be patronizing the restaurant, employees. Ken spoke about an enhanced transportation demand management plan to understand what kind of benefits you might be giving to employees, guests, to encourage them to use public transportation. I think what I'd really like to see, to get back to the traffic study, would have to include Mass Ave, obviously, but Lowell Street, Appleton Street, and probably Forest Street as well, because that becomes a major cut through for the neighborhood behind. And Clark Street, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is a private way. I'd like to have some idea of how much of an increase this building, with having the entrance and egress to the parking lot on Clark Street, will impact the neighborhood there, but also how the street will be maintained. I live on a private way myself. It's our responsibility to pay for road upkeep. I don't want to pass that on to the people who live there now. Maybe there's some sort of goodwill, good faith offer folks could make. Stormwater, I'm concerned about. If you are going down from grade on Mass Ave, I think we need to have a really detailed understanding of how any stormwater runoff coming down the hill, across Mass Ave, and across your property is going to be dealt with. I'm sure you've thought about that, but we need to see that. We need to look at that and have a detailed explanation of how that's going to go. Kim spoke a little bit about snow management, so that covers that aspect of things. Trash removal, how are you going to handle that? Is that going to be town pickup, or is that going to be a private pickup? We'd want to restrict the hours of that so that you're not disturbing neighbors behind. By the same token, I think we'd want to see how you plan to handle deliveries to the restaurant and the hotel, of course, both. We talked about screening the neighborhood. Landscape plan is something that's absolutely important. Trees, not only behind the building, but in front of the building, how you plan to manage street landscape, street trees. There isn't much there now. I'd like to see how you plan to increase that. Front of the building, and you're going to be valet parking cars at Quincy. How are you going to manage that? How are you going to rely on your valet service to make sure that they are handling their role as far as the neighbor goes? And much of your application materials refers to tour groups. And if you have tour buses at the building, where are they going to go? I don't think there's enough space behind the building to necessarily park a tour bus. You need to have an alternate site to send those to. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. Those are sort of my additions there. I'd really like to see all of those answered before we have them back. I'm sure that the other members of the board have things to say, so I'll go to David.
I'll try not to repeat a lot of the comments. Ken and Andrew have covered a lot of ground already. I also appreciate you bringing this kind of project before us. It's certainly very interesting, and I welcome the opportunity to have this discussion with you and see if we can get this project to a point where it's something that we can agree on moving forward. I'll just highlight a few questions and concerns that I have, some of which have been answered, but I think bear highlighting. I do think a more detailed traffic study is absolutely essential. The intersection of Appleton and Mass Ave is particularly complicated. There's a lot going on there at various times of day, including like school arrival and dismissal time, certainly when church services are happening. There's a lot more activity there. And then just beyond that intersection is Lowell Street, and that feeds into and out of another very complex intersection at Downing Square. And so I think we have kind of an entire system of kind of complicated intersections here, and the impact of a large business with the potential for a significant amount of trip generation, I think is a little bit of an unknown. I also echo Andrew's concern. I applaud you for wanting to target tour groups, but I do wonder where is the loading and unloading of tour buses going to happen. It would not be acceptable to do loading or unloading of buses or cars for that matter in a way that would either impede motor vehicle traffic or create a hazard for bicyclists using Mass Ave, since that is a very heavily used corridor, and that is not a particularly bicycle-friendly stretch of Mass Ave to begin with, and we certainly don't want to do anything that's going to make the conditions worse.
No, and in line with that, you have two bus stops in very close proximity to you, not directly on site, but very close. And as David mentioned, you've got the the middle school near there, where early in the morning and mid-afternoon, you have a lot of kids out there walking back and forth that don't always pay attention to traffic experience.
Yeah. I appreciate that at this early stage you are thinking about bicycle parking, and I'll refrain from making very detailed comments about that at this point. But I think that by following the new bicycle parking bylaw and working with with the planning department, you should be able to come up with solutions that should meet everybody's needs. But I do think that is only one component of what will have to be a much more fleshed out transportation demand management plan. I mean, particularly since you're asking for a very substantial parking reduction, you know, beyond even what would normally be contemplated with a transportation demand management plan. So I think we're going to have to look very carefully both at the traffic issues and at your proposed TDM plan to consider that. I also am concerned about the sidewalk width. I think you should do everything you can to maximize it. 4.5 or 5 feet in front of a building like this is just not sufficient. And you should, you're going to have to rethink that.
I don't want to respond, I just want to let you know that's existing conditions, just so you understand.
I understand.
I'm with you, I just want to clarify, just so you understand, that is what it is currently.
Yeah.
If we're able to pick it up, it would go in terms of, essentially, you were asking about it as well, that distance of the curb cut from the outside of the curb to basically where you hit the existing sidewalk. That's essentially, it's almost a 50-50. So that's what you would do. To get that, say closer to the 7, 8 feet, something like that, picking any number, anywhere from 6 feet to call it, if it's 8 feet currently right now, it would be, you could achieve it, it's not a problem. It's just, to that point, you definitely wouldn't, there would be no opportunity to have that drop like that.
I realize there's a lot of things in play here, and I do appreciate that you are trying to think about drop off and pick up, as well as loading, which is another issue that you need to have. Loading.
Loading, yes.
Yeah, which is another issue that was mentioned that you need to have thought through. And it's a balancing act, I realize. But
Whatever information we get,
yeah, yeah.
everything we've heard is impossible, so we're
Because of this location and that it is it is embedded in a neighborhood, both across the street and behind it. I think we do need to understand much better what the whole site's relationship to the neighborhood is going to be. One thing that I wanted to ask about, and I do appreciate you putting in the shadow studies at this stage. Since there are existing structures there, I think one thing that would be helpful would be to add a comparison of the existing shadow to the proposed shadow so that people might be able to understand what difference the new structure would make in shadowing on their property. If that's possible.
We'll look
Yeah.
at it, for sure. Absolutely sure.
Because I think it's not only what effect the new structure might have, but how it might change the experience of the people who live there from what currently exists. I don't have anything else that hasn't already been mentioned, I don't think, at the moment, so I'll defer further questions for the time being.
Gene?
I'm going to let Rachel go before me.
Okay. Fine. Go ahead, Rachel.
I just have a few questions about both the planning as well as the design of the building as well. And I think much like Ken, most of these are just questions that I think can be addressed in the future as opposed to something that we need to address right now. So the first comment that I had was looking at the entry facade where you have the restaurant and the hotel and the dual canopies. I think to me, it would be interesting to look at perhaps a hierarchy change between, right now they're rendered in the same way, that the entrance to the hotel is the same as the way that you're treating the entrance to the restaurant, and I think it might be interesting, again, if we're looking at the streetscape in that neighborhood, to be able to look at a hierarchy differentiation between the two entry points. I also, as you're looking at materials, I appreciate you running through what you're currently looking at now, and I echo Ken's request to, in the future, perhaps see some samples. But I'd also like to ask you to think about the stucco as a material. What I appreciated in your submission was that you referenced several precedents that were in the vein of the boutique hotel experience that you were looking to use as a reference point. And I would just identify that I think the expansive stucco that's been proposed seems out of place for the neighborhood and for the other business districts, both in Arlington Heights as well as in Arlington Center. So I would encourage you to look at whether it's stone or brick or clapboard or other materials that might perhaps be in closer context with the other business districts and the neighborhood, noting that this is abutting a residential neighborhood as well. I also had some concern about the number of louvers on the entry facade as well. I understand that that's how you're proposing to vent using the mechanical system that you proposed, but it's quite it makes quite an impact on the facade, and it's something that I'd like to see studied as well. I think as well, a question that I had on the rear facade, there is a balcony, I believe, proposed at the first level. And I really appreciate the outdoor seating, whether it's for the restaurant or again for patrons as they're gathering before and after they're leaving the hotel. I question the balcony on the exterior, given the fact that that is facing the abutters and the residents nearby, and whether that's used after hours. I would be concerned about noise, obviously less so on Mass Ave, but again, not knowing what the programming is there and what the purpose is, just something to keep in mind and address in the future. As we also continue to talk about the facade, looking at looks like sliding doors that are rendered on the top, I would also again think about the neighborhood and whether those types of sliders are in keeping with a boutique hotel and the neighborhood as well, or if there's a different way to render that's more in harmony with the context of the neighborhood. Another question that I would have is the signage. I do like the fact that you're proposing the canopy signage on the front and that is lit. Given that you are not currently proposing any entrance on the secondary street, I would question whether or not lit signage would be something that would be appropriate on the Park Street side of the building. I think that perhaps if there is a vertical banner or something else that would help signify as you're driving past the entrance, as opposed to again a lit piece of signage on the street heading out of the residence.
It was meant for wayfinding. Wayfinding can occur in a lot of different ways.
Sure. And then I think, to Ken's point earlier, looking for a little bit more information on some of the materials as we're looking at this seating area here. I'd like to also understand what the lighting is proposed here. I'm assuming that this is meant for dining for the restaurant use. So is there lighting underneath the canopy? I'm assuming that there is, and what is the quality of that, just so that we can address that for the neighborhood as well. I think that's all that's new that I've had. But I really appreciate the proposal and the detail that you've gone into thus far, which has allowed us to ask these more detailed questions.
Go ahead, Gene.
Thank you. And I'll echo what the other members of the redevelopment board said, which is it's an interesting project. It's an interesting project. It's an interesting project that can be very nice for Arlington. I share the concerns that were raised, and I'll add a few. some of the renderings, like this one, show trees in front, but when I look at your planting list, I don't see any trees on your planting list for the front, so I'm not really clear whether you're going to have street trees. I'd encourage you to have street trees, but it'd be nice to come back with some consistency between the renderings and what you're really going to be doing at the site. Second, I have a question for council, not for now, but for next time, about the floor area ratio. I don't understand why the maximum floor area ratio is at 1 and not 1.5. As I read the charts, which show mixed use of greater than 20,000 square feet, a FAR of 1. So I'd like you to take a look at that and next time you're back, explain why you think the FAR is 1.
I'm sorry, did you say because it's more than 20,000 square feet?
The building is not.
No, the lawn is 14,000 and change.
All right, we'll discuss that. Secondly, an increase of the FAR requires that a set of criteria and calculations be done.
Yes.
I'd like to see your calculations and how those lead us to give you the increase in the FAR.
If I can just make one general comment about all this, obviously you've seen that both Jim and Greg are chomping at the bit to answer a lot of these questions. And I think more for the sake of the public perception of this, I think you've recognized that a considerable amount of thought and detail went into this, even if the presentation materials don't reflect all of the thinking and all of the variations and all of the considerations. There's a considerable amount of discussion that's gone in there. What you've described, one example, we have those calculations, we considered all of those things. For me, agreed it was inappropriate, so I'm myself delighted at the level, that you've expressed the appreciation of the nature of the project, and we feel encouraged by that. Very helpful to get a sense, whether it's specific questions on compliance or general questions offering design suggestions. All of those things are valuable, and I think it's entirely in keeping with what we anticipated. And again, I say this at least 50% for the sake of public perception. We didn't come into this meeting just throwing together some helter-skelter plan. A fair amount of consideration went into it, and you see one set of design choices. Thank you.
And yeah, if you can send the calculations ahead of time before the next meeting so we have an opportunity to look at them, that would be nice. I took a quick look at the LEED checklist, and it looks like you're not going to be LEED certified in any way, and that's very disappointing. And we encourage places to be LEED certified, so I think it would be nice for you to take another look and get quite a few more than 21 points total, if that's what you're doing, or...
If I could just clarify, at this stage of the proposal, to try to address something like that's not realistic. I could have checked it off to fall into gold, could have went to platinum, which is realistically not going to happen, but gold is usually where you end up when you get those categories. It would have been disingenuous to me that they had filled that out and applied that at this point in time. And when I submitted that, I specifically said that that's what it is for now. Our expectation is that it'll meet one of those levels. So I can clearly, you know how that goes around. So.
Well, at some point before we approve it, we need to see what the actual LEED checklist will be. And there also needs to be a narrative that goes along with the checklist that a narrative that goes along with the checklist that describes how you're going to meet those standards. On your memo to us, I think this is just a typographical error, I just want to be sure. On page, this is your memo of June 20th. And when you're talking about the traffic reduction plan, and I agree, we need to actually see a plan. It says charge for parking off-site. I assume you meant to be parking on-site.
Correct.
But this says off-site.
I was correct.
I'm actually fairly concerned about what's going to happen with parking. I'll just add some things to what my colleagues had to say. It sounds like they're going to be charging people to park. You're asking for a fairly large reduction in the required amount of parking. I'm not clear what you're going to do when more people show up with cars than you have parking spaces.
Do I give you a little response now, or do you want to wait until later?
You can do both.
So basically, I will do both. That way we did indicate that we'll follow up with some of that.
We can't hear it back here. It's a hearing.
I think that's you. If you wanted to stand, perhaps they can hear you. Thank you. Thank you.
So essentially from the standpoint, the charge for parking is actually one of the recommendations that's in the bylaws. So that was one of the reasons we opted for that as well. Two is, anybody that knows, anything about the hotel industry, hotel industries believe that they are extremely successful. That's how they evaluate them, if they have 70% of occupancy. So if you take the 7 by the 50, it's 35 spots. We're suggesting that we could have 28. So the delta isn't that substantial when you think about it that way. However, I don't want to get into the weeds because there are additional employees and some other things, but again, that's what we will certainly address in that study. As it relates to a couple of comments about tour buses, keep in mind again, this is a 50-unit hotel. Buses generally handle about 35 people. At any given time, there would only be one bus, and it would not be on site. We've already talked to some people over in the industrial zone, and we've talked to some other people as it relates to that and other off-site parking as well. We have no intentions whatsoever of putting them towards the back of the property. We're certainly going to take all the input earlier about location of dumpster and things like that, loading space, etc. The whole tenor of this is to try to keep those type of things from infringing on the neighborhood as much as possible. Hence, loading. Most of the loading will have to do with the restaurant. There's very little loading as it relates to deliveries that it relates to any hotel, because just by the nature of hotels, if they don't have a restaurant, they don't have it. So the deliveries are more geared towards the restaurants. Again, we'll address that in there, but it will be similar to all the other restaurants up and down Mass Ave. I'm sorry to go beyond where you are, but we'll certainly get more detail on the traffic study.
Yeah, those are my additional comments to my colleagues' comments.
It's all been preliminary. Just we really appreciate the feedback, and it's helpful to us.
So at this point, unless there are any other questions, comments from the board, we'll come back to it, sure. Certain. I'm going to open it up for public comment, and I would ask you to please raise your hand. I'll try to do this as orderly and organized as possible. I think we have a lot of people that are going to want to speak tonight, so please keep your comments brief, and I am only going to be able to allow you to speak once, so keep that in mind as well. When I call on you, please stand up, state your name and address for the record, and you can direct your comments sort of generally. With that, I will open public comment. Yes, sir. The glasses.
I'm Kelvin Lamb. I live at 1188 Massachusetts Avenue, very close to the proposed site. So I can see the property from my house as well. And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the neighbors. Let me say that my family has lived at 1180 Massachusetts Avenue for almost 20 years. And since we moved to Arlington, we really fallen in love with the neighborhood. And from day one, that is. And our neighbors are very special to us. We help each other out a lot. Go out, clean the sidewalk in the wintertime. We are very close family almost. And as a lifelong resident living very close to the proposed site, we absolutely oppose the hotel proposal. Since we have a limited time, I'm not going to tell every story that I know of, but I will share only 3 points why we oppose this proposal. One, traffic issues. The board has, a member of the board has mentioned that as well. Second is the safety issues. The third is potential illegal issues. The key word is potential. So let me go over briefly the traffic issues. And the traffic volume will increase during demolition, construction, and operation of the 50-room hotel near our neighborhood. And the board members, some of them, have mentioned that as well, so I'm not going to elaborate on that either. The current traffic congestion of the complex intersection, if you look at the picture on the left side, it's very tricky interactions. Right? There is splits 4 ways in front of the Greek Church, the Leader Bank, and the bus stop, number 77 and number 79, that's right. And I work from home, okay? So I day in and day out see how congested the traffic is from early morning to the evening time. Because the 2-lane Massachusetts Avenue, I believe, is the most narrow Massachusetts Avenue along the Mass Ave, right? And I've seen many cars ignore the traffic light. I see it in front of me. Sometimes make me cringe, okay? And some honk aggressively because of frustration they face, right? And one example to support the idea is the town of Arlington has hired 2 school crossing guards nowadays to manage that traffic. One is not enough. I see middle school students running around like crazy. Well, they're young, it's okay, but imagine that. That's a great example how traffic problem could be amplified. And so I think the hotel proposal, or the hotel, will make this traffic issue much, much worse than what we now up to almost at the breaking point, right? The second issue that I like to bring is the safety issues. And logically, the traffic issues is lead into the safety issue. And especially the out-of-town guests of the hotel. Thank you. When they encounter this unusual interaction to face the pedestrian traffic, bicycles, buses, snowplowers, automobiles, garbage trucks, FedEx, UPS, fire truck, ambulances, they will be confused. Okay, and who will suffer? Maybe our children. And so the number 77 and 79 bus is a huge, important neighborhood transportation. A lot of people rely on that. Young people, strollers, families, physically challenged people, senior citizens rely on that. They will have the problem when you add up the 50-room hotel guests into this. Therefore, the safety issue is almost like the breaking point if we establish this hotel near our neighborhood. But third, last but not least, is the potential illegal issues. Okay, I put the emphasis on again potential. There's the potential illegal issues associated with the nature of the proposed business. Bluntly, the prostitution and human trafficking issues are associated with some hotel businesses. Okay, it is public knowledge that many police departments across our town and state work closely with hotel managers to prevent prostitution and human trafficking. For example, the current 1207 Mass Avenue is sandwiched between the automobile shop and the massage parlor. That massage parlor owner was arrested, and the massage parlor was closed last year for prostitution and human trafficking. Okay? And just to be clear, I'm not saying that the current proposal does not fall into that category. I repeat, does not fall into that. But the key question that I have is for our neighbors is can we afford to take the risk of this bringing this type of business to our neighborhood? So in summary, I and we respectively ask the redevelopment board to reject the proposal. And I appreciate the fact that town manager encourages include the community to involve with renting this place since 2015. I appreciate that, but the 50-room hotel is not the right answer for our neighborhood. And also, if I read it right, there's a live performance between Massachusetts Avenue and Clark Street. If that is true, it will congest more traffic and also noise pollution, okay? And please, I beg the board that do not be seduced by these economic benefits that you hear over and over again. That the safety of our middle school students is the most important factor that we should be considered. And the trendiness of this mixed-use boutique, I heard several times, this concept will come and go in the future. Next year, 10 years, 5 years, to be gone, that concept will be. But we're stuck with this hotel, right? So our community needs a safe middle school area in which to educate our children for generations to come. And thank you very much for your attention, sir.
Thank you. There you go. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Hi, my name is Park. I live on, 2325 Pier Street. I have a couple of questions and also comments. So what I understand is currently so the height wise, so zoning on that space, is there any vertical limit on the height the building can go up to? Do we know?
There is a maximum height in the B2 district, which is part of the property. It's 50 feet of 4 stories, and in B4 it's 60 feet of 5 stories.
Okay, thank you so much. And another thing is, because I live on Pier Street, it's like, my house is like 1 block. Like I can walk there in 2 minutes, like 1 minute maybe? So my question, couple of questions is, like everyone mentioned, parking. Right now, Pier Street is cut-through street as is right now. So people try to get to Mass Avenue from Turkey Hill. They use Forest Street. Because Forest Street and Massachusetts Avenue have stop sign, there are a lot of cars. So they decide to use my street to cut through and use Clark Street. And Clark Street, as you all know, is very messy intersection. Right now, on the corner, the car shop alone have so many cars parked on the street. And that alone blocks our view to turn right and left. If we have that whole building with very narrow sidewalk, it's going to be really dangerous unless the town decides to put street lights. And that, and also the Massachusetts Avenue and also Forest Street. And another thing is that the parking exemption they're looking for. So 50 hotel rooms and 25 parking spaces as far as I'm understanding. If that's the case, that is half of the room that they're looking to use as parking, right? Where are the employees going to be parking? Are they going to be just solely taking the bus, or are they going to be using the private way on Clark Street to park their cars to go to work, or my street? So that's the biggest question that I have. And given 25 parking spaces they're looking, so in my previous life I was architect for hotel. So there's also ADA regulation. They have to think about how many parking will be ADA accessible. So if it's going to be 50, they should have 2 ADA parking spots. And if it's 25, they're looking at 1 parking spot. So how many are they going for with the 50 hotel room with ADA parking spots? So even though they're looking for a parking exemption, it should be 2 ADA parking spots, and then the rest of it will be the regular parking spot, right? So how many are they looking for? So I want that kind of clarification as well.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Behind the woman that just spoke, I think you were next.
Mark Alcimo, 21 Appleton Street. So I'm in favor of something being done there. I like the mixed use of that area. Something better than the DAB falling down right now. Has been abandoned for 5 years. I don't know yet if this is the right thing yet. We'll see as this progresses. As I already pointed out, traffic there, the pedestrian way, everything there is a mess. So having a traffic study, I would be very much for that. I already sent a letter to the town board asking them to do one study, which the transportation board said they were going to do 10 years ago, so that hasn't happened yet. So things on the town to also look at that whole intersection. As was pointed out, that's a very narrow section right in front of the Leader Bank. And then on the other side, by Clark Street, it starts expanding quite a bit as you're going off to Wall Street and up to Duncan's. So that, I think, really needs to be looked at. Also, if you want to take the bus, the crosswalk for that is all the way down on the other side of Appleton Place. There's no crosswalk anywhere up there. And then you're crossing across a very wide, crazy section of Mass Ave. People come down the hill. I'm sure a lot of people here heard the car accidents there. You know, a year ago, a bus ran into a car. Like, I don't know how the car missed the bus, but they did. The other thing was pointed out, utilities. There are a whole bunch of poles there. Are you going to have anything done with utilities there? I mean, a boutique hotel would be great, but you open your window and there's power wires right in front of you. That's not a good look. So I don't know if you're going to look to relocate the power lines, the telephone poles, everything there. This is one right in the corner there of Clark Street and Mass Ave. As being someone on the southbound side, a little worried about that steel curtain wall. I don't want to be reflected on, by at winter time and have our house melted from your nice shiny building that's happened before.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ivana. I'm on the corner of Clark Street and Pierce. We have a son who's going to be growing up there, and I know there's a lot of children in that neighborhood as well. I'm pretty concerned, just reflecting on the traffic studies, but I didn't hear much emphasis on going over Clark Street. And there's a ton behind the hotel. There's a ton of families with kids over there, and I just want to draw more attention to doing studies behind the hotel as well. Not just, I understand in front of Mass Ave and the streets across is urgent as well, but please also put attention to that neighborhood right behind where the hotel is proposed. And secondly, there was mention of shadow studies. If something can be done with view studies as well. This is, right in front of me. And right now we have a really nice view actually of the street, the church steeple. Right now I imagine I'm going to be seeing a big wall. And maybe if there could be some accommodation to that mechanical room that's being, the placement there. I just really would like to see what the change of the views would be for the residents behind the hotel.
Thank you. In the back, yes. Behind you, and then I'll call. Yes.
Barbara Clinton, 223 Park Avenue. I'll be very brief. I'm just delighted to hear that the ARB is considering what I think is a really important and new, exciting project for developing some commercial tax base in Arlington and for developing our commercial corridors. I was wandering around Lexington Center the other night, and I know they have a hotel, I believe, in Lexington Center, and I couldn't even find the entrance. It sort of blends in so well into the town. So I'm sure that the developers will consider the traffic circulation, parking, design issues that I really applaud the town for taking this on. I'm glad we have an opportunity to consider it.
Yep, right. The gentleman just asked to sit down.
Michael Riley, Lock Street, one street west of Clark. I know there's a lot of rental units on Mass Ave in this particular area. Some of them are smaller houses that will have a multitude, I wouldn't say boarding houses, but bordering on bordering houses. The overflow of people parking from those that don't have a spot in these smaller lots are parking on Lock Street, Pierce Street overnight, sometimes ticketed, sometimes not. And this is just without an overflow of a 50-unit building. This is just what's happening every night. There's usually 2 or 3, sometimes 4 cars parked on Lock Street that I know of, someone on Pierce that are there all night. Occasionally ticketed, but you can't expect them to always be ticketed. There's that problem. There's also the flow of children going to school and walking across, talking with their friends to go to Addison, not paying attention, walking off the curb frequently. You know, we understand it, we're from the neighborhood, we're watching for them all the time. But with Clark Street being used as a cut-through at school time in the morning, people coming up Forest Street don't want to wait in that long line, cut up Pierce, and then cut on to Clark because they don't want to go to the end of Pierce and up block where they have to cut back around. And, you know, 30, 40, 50 cars in the morning would go up that street just to avoid the confusion that happens every morning as kids are heading to Addison. So there's a huge issue with parking. There's also people, because where Lowell Street in front of Mass Ave, there's such an acute angle that people coming on there blow through the stop sign because their car's parked right up to the horse fountain on Mass Ave. You cannot see until you're 60 feet beyond the park cars and beyond the stop sign, where you can see what's coming down Mass Ave from the heights. So with all of that, and then adding more traffic consistently in that area, is really rough. Just my thoughts.
Don Seltzer, Irving Street. I want to say first that it's my opinion that a small hotel is a really good use for Arlington. It's going to provide extra revenues above what we get from property taxes. It fits a need for residents with family or friends visiting, and it's not going to send any kids to our schools. But I'm looking closely at the plans for this particular development, and there are some concerns. I found a number of fairly serious dimensional problems which need to be corrected before it can be compliant with our zoning laws. I was prepared to show these in some detail, expecting that there would be a projector and screen here. I'll try to muddle through it just using the posters provided by the applicant. Okay, let's start off with some of the concerns raised by Jean, I believe, regarding floor area ratio, how much actual gross floor area there is. I found that the applicant has apparently forgotten to include some of the basement space. The parking area isn't included, mechanical area, and that part that's used for that services visit. But he forgot to include the exercise room, the bike storage room, the stairwells, elevator shaft, and the laundry area. And that adds another 1,380 feet to the actual gross floor area. Do the calculations right, and the actual floor area ratio this time is 1.84. Quite a bit above what the zoning limit is of 1.5. Now, I know the applicant is asking for relief under 5.3.6, but I think, as I didn't quite hear, but I think it was pointed out that this board can only grant an exemption to that for properties that are greater than 20,000 square feet. And this one's only 14,000 square feet. So that would simply does not apply. Let's see. I think I'm going to start pointing out things here on this picture. Maybe I'll turn it a little bit so some of the public can see this too. Yes, this one. So, let's start off with the fact that this is on a corner. The applicant has designed something that has zero setback along Clark Street. As I believe the board is quite familiar, having debated it fairly recently, is that 5.3.8 corner lots requires that on the other street, Clark in this case, we have to have the same yard setback as the other adjoining properties on that street. And the required setback on that street is 20 feet. So we're losing 20 feet off of this end of the building. Let's see. If you looked at other views, you'd see that the trash area is in this. That has to go somewhere else. We're going to lose the stairwell on this and the sliver of the restaurant on the first floor. Let's see. I already mentioned that the bottom area, 540 square feet for the exercise room and bicycle storage has to be added on, 840 square feet for elevator, shaft, stairwell, and hotel laundry. We lose 360 square feet on the first floor with that extra setback. Now we get to the second and third floors, so particularly the third. I refer the board to 5.3.17, upper story building setbacks. This is another topic we debated quite closely this past spring, and you decided to leave the bylaw as it's stood, which means that the step back starts at the third floor for a building like that. And furthermore, it's on a corner. The step back applies on all street sides. So we need step back over here too, along Clark. And if you take that into account, you lose 2,000 square feet on the third floor, and we have also have to take away 600 square feet on the second floor from the 20-foot setback. And let's see, now let's move up to the fourth floor. There was a lady in the back who had a question about building heights, what's allowed. Well, what the applicant has not considered is that this building, the height buffer zone rules clearly apply. The house is abutting it right behind it. So that means that for this portion of the building that's in the B2 zone, the maximum height allowed is only 3 stories. We lose the whole 1,600 square feet of the fourth floor at this end. And going back to the step back and other things, we lose another 675 square feet on the fourth floor of this building. The applicant has interestingly declared that 2,000 square feet of this fourth floor, he's counting towards usable open space. I do not know where he got that from. Everybody in this room and this board knows that you cannot count rooftop decks as usable open space. In fact, if you look at the entire property, there isn't a single square foot of usable open space on this entire property. All the ground level, if you read the definition of usable open spaces, it has to be 25 feet minimum in all horizontal directions. And other than counting the paved parking lot, there's nothing that satisfies those dimensional constraints. Let's see. Ken, I believe you raised some issues about elevations that the information provided seemed rather inadequate. And in particular, there's only one height dimension that's given for this building, and that's 44 feet in this corner, which is the shortest one. All the other corners, the building height is larger. In fact, at the back, apparently there's an extra 10 feet of height. It's 53.5 feet high in one of the back corners. There's a big unknown as to what actually happens between Park Street and going down to the parking lot. It's a 10-foot drop from the Mass Avenue elevation. So I strongly suspect that the driveway, as shown in some of the pictures, has an excessively dangerous slope where it goes from the sidewalk down into the parking lot area. I suspect it's pretty close to 20%. Let's see, what else do we have? I'm going to end with some, oh, there's one other thing, in parking, there are 7 spots in the back, along the back there, parallel parking. They're only 16 feet long. The bylaw specify that they have to be 22 feet long. And I'll end up with some good news. With all the changes to the floor area, I knocked off 3,855 square feet. That brings you down to a gross area of 20,558 square feet. Your gross floor area is now 1.47, which is conforming. Glad to answer any questions if you have about some of the specifics. I have emailed you links to my detailed drawings about this that you can refer to.
Thank you. In the front, sir. Yes. Me? You.
Excellent. My name is Marlon Banta. I live at 24 Clark Street. I'll say when I saw the proposal for the hotel, I was quite intrigued. I think it'd be a lot of potential here. Interesting to have a restaurant. My wife and I can take a quick walk up the road and have a date night. But that potential only exists, if this development is a good neighbor to us. As you said, we're on Clark Street. It's a private way. We don't get any help from the city to maintain the roads. What happens, not if, but when, you get that fantastic night and everybody wants to stay in your hotel, and we exceed, 25 spaces. I would also warn, you can look on hotels.com or TripAdvisor, see many guests who say, it was a wonderful stay here, but my car got towed, 1 out of 10 stars. So you run a strong reputational risk in the hotel as well by making parking an issue. So I would strongly encourage to resolve, and I'd ask the redevelopment board, what do we do on Clark Street if we have a problem if this project goes forward? There are many residents here on Park Street and Pierce Street as well who are living in a very peaceful neighborhood. We've got a lot of young children. What's going to happen in that situation? Traffic. I'm very happy to hear about proposals for more traffic studies. I live on Clark, and I see people trying to shave off 30, 40 seconds off their commute by turning right off Forest, going up Pierce and up Clark Street, and then having a really tough time seeing down Mass Ave. And I've seen multiple times when cars have had to come to a screeching halt because they couldn't see around, the cars parked on Mass Ave. This hotel may solve that. There won't be a used car lot with cars waiting outside in the street, but we want to make sure that we don't increase any problems. I'm a little bit concerned. I know there's regulations regarding to demolition, but there's some old buildings there. I just had to de-lead my house. A lot of concerns with lead paint in the area, asbestos. A lot of nasty stuff in those old buildings. You look at the DAV, the buildings, the facade's leaning in a little bit. Concerned about that. Just want to make sure that during the demolition phase, we mitigate dust. I just paid a ton of money for a solar array, and I'm quite concerned that a 44-foot building is going to kill production on my solar array. And I'm one of 3 residents in the area who have a solar array on their roof. So I'd be more interested to see the shadow study. And in fact, production for my solar array is highest during the shoulder months. In the fall, and in the spring. Concerned about noise from the mechanical equipment at the top of the building. Concerned that, of course, every hotel has to have a smoking area. Please don't make it on Clark Street. It's a terrible thing to have a smoking area to begin with, but we have to have it. I would push back to the redevelopment board. I honestly can't believe we can allow a building this size without a proposal to be at least LEED Gold. This is 2019. They should be proposing LEED Platinum I think everyone should, but LEED Gold at the bare minimum. Talk to the Harvard University Office for Sustainability. They can achieve net positive payback within 5 to 7 years for new dormitory development that's LEED Platinum. I would also ask, just a small thing, ask what will the wage of the lowest paid employee be? You know, will the average employee of this hotel be able to actually afford to live in Arlington? You know, something to concern ourselves with. Maybe that would alleviate some of the traffic concerns. Again, intrigued by the proposal. It'd be very nice to see that area developed, but it's important that it's a good neighbor, and you know, I'm a neighbor on Clark Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question? Did you see the shadow study they put up in your house?
I didn't get a chance to look at it, but I will.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
All these materials are online as well.
Okay.
You know, on the town website. Okay.
Hi, I'm Pam Hallett with Housing Corporation of Arlington. We own 21 rental units right in this area, so on Mass Ave, Forest, and Pierce. We have excess parking, by the way, for anyone who is concerned about rental units not having enough parking. I think this is a great idea. We have, first of all, our 21 tenants who have friends coming in to stay, have no place to put them up. They usually end up sleeping on their floor in the living room or something. I also have siblings and friends, etc., flying in from Toronto and Alaska and Chicago and California and Washington, who usually end up having to stay either in town, Boston, or Cambridge, or bunked up in my house somewhere. So I think this is a wonderful idea. I'd like, though, to see it be a real boutique motel rather than something that looks a bit like, I hate to say it, but a Motel 6. If we could get something that was a really exciting look, I think you'd have a lot more people sort of buy into it and support you. I think the idea of having a restaurant on the first floor is fabulous. I think the whole Heights section of town would love having a new restaurant space, but you got to do better with the facade. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, you got to have the glasses.
Yeah, my name is Sherry Barron. I don't live in the neighborhood, so, well, I sympathize. I have a different area of questioning. Has there been, I'd like to know if there's been a marketing study done. And who do we think will use the hotel? I know Pam's talking about relatives. I don't know if the other hotel in town is closed or defunct, but
No,
I
it's
think
full every night.
It's full every night. Okay, so that might be an indication. I did some research. 80% is really the rate that most hotels are successful at. So it's a little higher than 70. So I wanted to know how you would differentiate from the other hotel, first of all. I mean, I think obviously being boutique and having a restaurant, but the other hotel is near several restaurants. And since the hotels will be used by family members, what will the average rack rate be? In other words, what can family members and friends and relatives expect to pay? The other hotel is already pretty expensive, so I think that's an issue. And the other thing is, when you go to write a book, people tell you that you should write about what you know. So I'm wondering what the owners know about running a hotel and running a restaurant. I assume that they won't be doing that, but will they know how to screen the people who will be doing that? What the qualifications will be, how to run these two institutions, because both of them are very difficult. Restaurants have a very small chance of ever making it. So those, I think, are important questions so that down the road, if this gets built, we don't find out that it's not working and this is all for naught.
Yeah, right after.
Yeah, hi, Al Tosti from One Watermill Place off Wall Street. I'm excited about this whole thing. I mean, for years, before town meeting, everybody, well, why are we doing all this residential? Why aren't we doing more commercial? Why aren't we doing more retail? So this would seem to be an excellent answer to that. Also, as a resident, I get off the 77 bus right in front of Weeder Street, and I walk by this eyesore. I mean, you've basically got a used car lot in an old abandoned building. They should go. And so I think this could be a very positive for the area. But I think a lot of people have raised concerns that need to be taken into consideration by the board.
One suggestion I do have is as you face where this building would be, on the right is an old white building that, at least on the front, first floor, looks abandoned, nobody's using it. And it's really not much space on the second. They can't be that expensive if it's for sale. And then on the other side, next to the side street, is an old abandoned pizza parlor that's been empty for, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Both of those areas could allow for additional parking and maybe for a redesign that could take into account some of these areas. So just my suggestion, and again, I think this would be great for the town.
Thank you. Back.
Hi, I'm Carol McDonald. I live at 1192, 1194 Mass Ave, right at the intersection of Appleton Place, Mass Ave, and Appleton Street. I've been here all my life. I see fatal accidents. I see the police car almost get hit by a car, twice accident. It's a congested area. I think you should have a traffic study there when school is on. I'm involved. Sometimes I can't get out of my driveway. I take a left on Father Street, I take a left on Pierce Street, and I take a left on Clark, because there's a lot of traffic there. So, I just think a hotel in Arlington is a great idea, but I don't think it's that location. I really don't.
Al Jones, 1 Lehigh Street, this was an ancient Lehigh, most of them know, you misspelled Lehigh. Also, by the way,
I'm sorry, I knew that though.
It's foot of the rocks, not foot of the hills, you should know that. But in any case, I agree about the aesthetic, it really doesn't look like a boutique hotel, it does. So I know, I get your name, Mr. McAvoy? Correct. You're an alumni of Boston Architectural Center, which my wife is also, so I know you can do better if you're challenged. So let's make something that we can all be proud of instead. But a lot of the comments, issues that the neighbors have to do with traffic, and there's the Appleton Street intersection, there's also the Forest Street intersection. The Forest Street intersection with that sea of asphalt, there's a lot of opportunity to improve that. I've seen a lot of, Wall Street, sorry. Well, you know, the big sea of asphalt in front of the culverts. I've seen a lot of very interesting ideas to improve that. Now, Arlington has a long, proud tradition of linking big new developments with some funding to improve public spaces. So I would just encourage the board to think about having something where the developers could improve that intersection, do the engineering studies, come up with a way to eliminate that, maybe tee it down, road diet, make it safer, put a crosswalk, maybe a hawk or something like that. But I think there's an opportunity here to get some improvement that would help us all, safety and aesthetically, out of this development. I hope the problems can all be solved when it goes through, because in general, I think it's a good use of the space and an improvement of the blighted area that we have now. Thank you.
Ms. Leroy. No, Ms. Leroy.
Hi. I'm a lawyer. I live at 12 Pierce Street. I'm a town meeting member from the district. I appreciate many articulate neighbors that are here, and many of my neighbors that have already spoken addressed many of my concerns. I submitted a report, comments to the board, which I guess were already posted, so people can look at them. Many of the same kinds of issues have been raised. So rather than go over traffic and parking and a lot of things that have already been addressed a lot, let me just mention a couple of other things. One is that there's been references made to permits that have been waived, and I would like some explanation about that.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Permit fees that have been waived.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting.
It hasn't been discussed at all.
Okay, well, we're going to discuss that when it is raised. In the RFP, the select board stated that it would be acceptable to waive the fees or a portion of the fees thereof for the building permit and for any other permitting process in order to expedite the process of this development, whatever it might be. So this board needs to accept that. The developer, as the applicant, has already paid half of the fee for the special permit fee that's required, because it's two properties technically, but this board needs to accept that, and if they
they do, then we'll continue as we do normally. If not, then they would need to provide for the entire fee. But the select board put into the RFP that is something that is possible, but this board needs to accept that, so we will get there.
In return for deed.
Right.
Well, I don't know that I quite understand all the legal part of that, but I mean, it just seems a shame that where the town is losing a lot of money from potential fees, and that sounds like history, so I'll leave it at that, but obviously I'm going to look into that further perhaps. The other thing is that this part of this area is zoned as B2, as everybody seems to know. That's defined as small-scale neighborhood retail and commercial development, which this project is not, in my opinion. So I know that that's part of the variances that are being asked for in this permit, the permit process. So, but I just think that looking at what the definition of a B2 zone is and the other kinds of businesses that are in our immediate neighborhood there, in the block and across the street, that's something that should be paid more attention to. That this development just seems, it's a good idea to have some kind of development along Mass Ave. I'm not trying to say that I'm anti-development at all, but this particular project, the way it's been presented so far, it just seems too big and too large and not appropriate for that small site. I also want to mention that Millbrook is just a block and a half away. That hasn't been mentioned at all. And I know that you're asking for stormwater studies and things like that. So I think that's a very important thing to bring up. That as you said, the land flows down Clark Street, down toward Millbrook. And so stormwater and drainage has to be looked at there. Clark Street is a private street, as other people have mentioned. I live on Pierce Street, but the traffic cut-throughs that other people have mentioned is really already difficult, especially in the mornings when kids are going to school, families are dropping off their kids. And overnight parking has become a big problem as well. So I think all those things have been addressed, and I'm glad that you're going to be looking at more studies to try to get to the bottom of all this.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Loretti, 56 Adams Street. I appreciate people bringing up the issue of this B2 neighborhood business district. I would like to bring you back to a comment you made earlier about the commitments that were made to town meeting when the mixed-use zoning bylaw was passed. And here are a few things the ARB chair said at the time. Any use that comes into a neighborhood has to comply with what's already permitted in that district. And again, the use has to fit the neighborhood. It has to fit what is already allowed under zoning. And again, it has to fit within the permitted use. A parking garage won't be permitted won't be permitted there if the parking garage isn't permitted. It has to fit what is already allowed under zoning. Now, as you know, Mr. Chairman, you were the chair at that time, and I'm wondering, do you still stand behind those statements?
I still need more information on this project, how it'll impact the neighborhood. I haven't even remotely decided how I'll vote on this yet.
No, I'm not asking you that, sir. I'm asking you whether you stand behind those statements you made to town meeting.
I'm committed to considering how any project fits into a neighborhood.
Well, I don't think you're answering the question. I'd like to
I'm committed to
determining what another member of the board said.
The member of the board who's no longer a member of the board, is that correct?
I'm talking about the commitments that were made to town meeting by the ARB in 2016, and he said, we've worked with both the head of inspectional services as well as town council on the ordinance that is before you. And I quote, only the uses that are permitted in a particular district are the ones that can happen in a mixed use in that district. So just to clarify on that point. End quote. And I bring this up for the particular reason that hotels are not allowed in the B2 zoning district, period. Now, somebody talked about a variance. Another point that needs to be made, and I think your word was, the public has to also, we don't give use variances in town, and your word doesn't give any kind of variances. So you have no authority to grant variance on that point. And I also bring that up, so really what gratifies to see so many others here Because as you know, and as town council knows, when your board is acting in a quasi-judicial capacity, you have to act consistently with the way the law was passed. Because if you don't do so, I would submit that you're acting arbitrarily, capriciously, and contrary to the law. And any one of the abutters, anyone who received a notice and who's a party of interest, could very easily appeal the special permits to court and have it overturned. And I think you all need to understand that, and all of the abutters, anyone who received that notice and who's a party of interest, you have the power to get this thrown out if they allow the hotel in the B2 district. The solution, sir, is for you, your board, or others to change zoning. You can go before a town meeting and get a zoning change. And you would change the zoning in that district to allow hotels should you want this project to go forward. That's what's needed, if indeed you wish it to be implemented. Having said that, I'd like just to go on, and in this case I'm assuming that that change is made. And I want to emphasize one, as a former member of the Redevelopment Board, I can tell you, neither the special permit conditions that have to be met, nor the environmental design review criteria that have to be met, say anything about tax revenue. So it's great to see so many members of the Finance Committee here, but that's not a criterion for issuing a special permit. If it were, nonprofits and other types of organizations that don't generate much tax revenue would really be in trouble. A couple other things I'm going to mention, also assuming the zoning change is made, is you mentioned the lack of plans for open space. I would ask not only that those plans be provided, but they show the specific areas that meet the requirements for usable open space and landscape open space on the diagrams. Mr. Seltzer mentioned the issue of not qualifying for the FAR bonus. So in addition to the calculations the developer or the current developer might present, there needs to be a rationalization or explanation of how this can qualify for any FAR bonus at all. When I was on the board, in the regulations in the zoning bylaw for both projects that come under environmental design review and applications for exceptions to the floor area ratio limitation speak of the need for a model and the ability for the board to, or actually the need for a model for these types of projects. I don't see any model, and I'm wondering, has the board waived that? I'm not aware that during meetings that previously discussed this. I would ask that you ask the developer for a model that shows both the proposed hotel and the neighboring property. Finally, is with respect to the traffic study, I appreciate that you are asking for more detail. When I was on the board, typically we would refer these types of matters to the Transportation Advisory Committee, not to do the study themselves, but to consult with the traffic engineering firm working for the developer so that they can ensure that all of the relevant information is required. And so I would ask you to do the same thing in this case. And again, and also more specifically to require the developer to use a professional traffic engineer to do the traffic study, because from what I could see from the submission, the developer himself was doing it. And I'm not aware that he has any qualifications in that area. Another point that you touched on, but I don't think is fully appreciated, is this loading and unloading area along Mass Ave. The bylaw is very specific that those areas have to be on the lot. It looks like for this project, they're in the public way, on town property. And that, again, would be contrary to the bylaw. And finally, if I understood the answer to the question about the fees, it sounded like you have the discretion to waive them or half waive them. I can't see any reason why you should do that. Certainly, that should have been something that the developer considered in his bid to the town. And furthermore, I don't think the selectmen have any authority whatsoever to waive those fees. You said, the town laws and regulations. And I can't imagine that they can unilaterally just waive them. And I don't think you should either. Finally, I want to just ask and say, I really hope you're not planning to close the public hearing tonight, because the public needs to be heard both on the traffic study, a real traffic study, and the real plans. I've never heard a public hearing described as a meet and greet. And frankly, I was expecting this to be a lot further along and able to be reviewed at this time. Look at all the people that are here. I think interested parties should have the opportunity to look at a real special permit application and comments. I would ask you not to vote for this tonight and give the public the right to be heard. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara McCauley. I live at 1184 Mass Ave, which is roughly across the street from the animal clinic. I'd like to hear more about the live music that's referenced in the proposal, both in the restaurant and outdoors periodically.
You can answer that.
So similar to, I'm sorry, I was facing forward, so I'm not. So similar, I don't know if you've been to Monogamy Cabin, if you've been to the, I apologize. Common Ground. Town Cabin, thank you. I was going to say I don't want to slight the owner of it. Enjoy it. So it would be, it's planned, the live music as referenced in there is planned to be in a potential restaurant. Now, as it relates to the reference about that patio area at the corner of Clark, that conceivably it could be there. It could be for art exhibits. It could be for, various type of public, type events. So that's what the plan is. But the plan is not to have, as it relates to live music referenced in there, out on the patio on any type of regular basis. That's geared to the inside of the restaurant.
That's what I want to know.
I'm sorry?
Others did not have to listen to the music if they didn't want to. In other words, it's not going to be so loud.
Correct.
2-3 houses away, they'll hear it.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks.
Sort of in the back there. Yep. You looking around.
My name's Lorraine Gotti. I live on West Pond Avenue. I really encourage you, there were numerous deficiencies in the application that were noted in the July 16th memo to the board from Jennifer Raitt. I agree those need to be addressed with concrete data. I think that's what a lot of people here are asking for today, is concrete data which supports the many claims that are being made in a very big ask for a number of exemptions for bylaws that were put in place for good reason. And to those I'm going to add two. First, I was really surprised to see the application use the term blighted in terms of the surrounding neighborhoods. My understanding was that had a very specific use in terms of development, and I don't believe it applies here. It seemed a very poor choice of words. And second, the use of Clark Way, which is a private way. There are a lot of rules about how private ways can and cannot be used. I'd like to be assured in every way that that's fully understood and that the rights and obligations of being on a private way are fully respected. But more specifically, I want to get back to this whole traffic issue, because that is indeed the core of the problem with this too big development. A hotel is a great idea. More commercial development is a great idea. On Mass Ave, where there's already the opportunity for that, all a great idea. But they're proposing 28 parking spaces, 20 of them tandem parking, which anyone who's lived with that knows isn't as easy as it sounds. This is for 50 hotel rooms, which they're hoping are 100% occupied. A restaurant that is shown in their drawings as 84 seats. Now, I understand apparently there is 0 parking spaces required for those 84 seats, which makes no sense to me, but I'm not going to try to delve into it. We're now looking at a site that has potential occupancy, including employees, of upwards of 200 people at any given time, with 28 parking spaces, several of which are likely to have to be ADA handicap reserved. So from where I stand, that's ludicrous. We all hope it will change, but the facts right now the facts don't support that. And if you can come up with a parking study and a traffic study that supports that, I'll be with you. I doubt you can. Second, as has been pointed out, we have Appleton, we have Lowell Street, we have a steep slope coming up to Mass Ave, in the middle, bracketed by those difficult intersections. I go through them regularly. This is not trivial traffic. And again, we have St. Athanasius and we have Audison. Both of them regularly hold very large public events where parking is completely full up Mass Ave, several hundred yards beyond where the hotel and restaurants are slated to be. These are all very significant concerns for the safety of pedestrians, and the lack of sight lines once you put a 4-story building there. And then finally, the question of delivery vehicles, drop-offs. Where are people going to go while they're checking into the hotel? All of these are very valid questions, and all of these deserve solid answers that have real data backing them up before we as a town give on setbacks, on floor ratio, on parking spaces, on all these things that we're being asked to give extra consideration on. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Tara Bradley, 28 Clark Street, and although this is probably not part of the regular kind of application process, as a courtesy, I'd like to know kind of the availability of a front desk agent of some sort, whether it's like a night auditor or something like that, that if I needed to call early in the morning because of a truck being in the way or late at night because of noise, if there was an easy way to get through to someone before I'd have to escalate to the police. So that would be something I'd like to know more about, as opposed to having to know, that I have to call John, the maintenance guy, at this time, and I only know that because I went in and asked. But if I could just Google a number, call it, and get someone, a professional front desk person to assist me with my issue as a neighbor.
It's a hotel operation, someone will be at the front desk, available for you 24/7.
Other questions, comments, concerns from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Julie Horvath, and I am a 25-year resident of Arlington and a 20-year realtor at Central Florida Adams. I'm not a neighbor, I live on Kimball Road, but it's always educational coming here and listening to everyone who has intelligent ideas. I know Jim's already into real estate a little bit, he commented on it 15 years ago. He does wonderful work. I do think, though, that this property is not the right land value for the land for the property. It needs to be on something such as the East Arlington Hotel, where it's near, it's Cambridge. It's, I agree with I agree with mixed use. I agree with, making the Heights a more desirable place to be. We actually have Arlington Heights business meetings where we're trying to revitalize the area, and I'm all in agreement with all of that. I do think safety is a huge issue. It's very congested. I go along with all of that. I do like the idea, but I think it should be on a bigger space.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? I'm going to turn it back to the board. I think it's pretty clear that we have a lot of questions that need to be answered. We've heard that from the board here. We'll continue to consider this project and how it fits the character of the neighborhood that's there. And whether it's appropriate for a special permit, it's allowed, or before it's allowed under mixed use, especially whether it's permitted here. And it's a good fit. Continue to take input from the neighbors. It's very important to us to listen to you and to hear your thoughts and concerns. And I appreciate you all being here and taking the time to speak. So with that, I will do a motion to continue this matter to another date. And I'll allow the proponent to let us know when we might be ready, willing, and able to come back on a Monday night before we have a regular scheduled meeting.
When is the next regularly scheduled meeting?
August 12th.
August 12th? Thank you, Ty. I mean, to go through all of that. And I don't want you to take that the wrong way. I mean, I go back to what I said earlier, all very valuable information. We want to be responsive. So my suspicion is it will try to be best for all of us. I have a couple of people after we graduate college, 2 different weeks that I want to go together, so in late August. So yeah, I think it would be more productive for everyone involved if we were to push that to the September 9th.
So motion.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We have additional business to discuss. I'm sure there's going to be an exodus out of the room. Please do so quietly and keep it down until you get downstairs, just out of courtesy to the rest of us. Thank you again for coming. I appreciate your input.
You take it.
I noticed the calendar. Did you work it out?
No.
I just noticed.
They've done a couple projects for me.
I work with calendar, so that's why.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
We're still in our...
Is this one try flag?
No, it's going to be independent. I like to think it's a selling feature because
That's fine. Usually flags have different requirements. So.
we take note.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll send you my stuff. If you don't think good. It's better word in the results than what I said.
Thank you. Will you say something? My mother got it all the time. Really does. Probably one of her most dearest friends. Absolutely.
I have to look at that now.
I just have to get outside of here because they have other business. Thank you very much. Likewise. Good to see you. I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to be in touch with you anyhow to get your some input. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yep.
Thank you guys both for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Not bad.
Thank you very much.
So once these guys clear it up, we'll move on to the minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Was this a correction to previously?
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
So embarrassed.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. No worries.
How are you carrying everything? How did all those guys come down?
I'm doing the third already.
Jeez.
Steve, I think I'm gonna put a subtitle in some parts.
So moving on, it's brought to our attention that the meeting minutes from April 24th need to be amended. Our last meeting, Gene voted, even though he was not in attendance, so we
As soon as I saw this,
to reopen that.
I installed
And,
that as an apology.
we also, the town manager was in attendance at that meeting, so that needs to be amended to reflect the attendance at that meeting, the actual vote. So we have two steps. First, we'll vote to reopen the minutes of April 24th, 2019.
Motion to open the minutes of April 24th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And we need a motion to approve the minutes as amended. We will need to have two extensions.
Motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moving on to open forum, I know we had a lot of conversation tonight. Is there anything you wish to speak on a different matter this evening? Seltzer?
Just a little clarification on the amendment, amending of the minutes for the April 24th meeting. One thing that I think needs a little more clarification is you say that you dismissed the staff during deliberations.
exactly who were the staff that were dismissed? So the town manager continued on participating?
Town manager, yeah. Jennifer Rake's listed as an attendant. She was in attendance. She is a staff member. For purposes of these minutes, we consider the town manager a member of staff. I don't know the purposes of these minutes, we consider the town manager staff.
But so both Jennifer and Adam left before we started deliberations and voting.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other comments? Mr. Redevelopment.
I just have a little one. A couple of months ago, I got interested in the difference between land values and housing values in county, land and building values in county. And so I picked up a few months worth of, or a few years worth of assessor's data and started to look at it. Now, from 2013 on, or starting at about 2013, single-family homes were slightly less expensive than single-family lots. So the land was just a little bit more expensive. And as you go from 2013 to 2018, the difference gets bigger and bigger. So I mean, when you at the current point in time, 95% of single-family lots have a land value that's significantly larger than the building value. Now, with 2 and 3 families, the situation was reversed. So the buildings were more assessed at a higher rate, and the land was assessed at a lower rate. But over time, the two have been converging. I was wondering, what are they going to cost? Well, 2019 is the year that they crossed. So as of this year, your typical, let's see, 87% of 2-family homes the structures are worth less than the land they're built on. And 55 of 3-family homes also have structures that are worth less than the land. So median lot size, low density residential currently ranges from around $440,000 for a single-family home up to about $478,000 for a 2-family home. So this was the year land took off.
Wow. All right. Thank you. We'll talk about the letter that we received from you at a future meeting.
Okay.
Well. So thank
Yeah,
you.
I had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, let's put that on the agenda for another meeting. Mr. Loretti? Go ahead, Mr. Loretti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Loretti, I have a few requests for zoning changes, and I consider these technical clarifications largely resulting from stuff that was left out during the clarification. The first one pertains to sections 542, 552, and 562, and the requirements for open space. And the earlier version of the bylaws required that the percentages refer to the percentage gross floor area. Currently, it just says percent, it doesn't say percentage what. And I'm requesting that that be amended so that it's clear that it's the gross floor area. And then in section 5.4.2, we're into the table of use, table of dimensional and density regulations. And there's a heading right at the beginning of that called legend for tables. And that underneath the legend includes SP and Y. But those items are not relevant to the dimensional and density requirements. They're relevant to the table of use regulations. The table of use regulations is 5.4.3. So those two items should be moved to immediately before that table. And also, a line should be added that was in the prior bylaw that's gone missing in the recodification that says uses designated with the line shall not be permitted in the district. Now, a similar thing happens under section 5.5.2, and then we get, which is for business uses, and then you get 5.6.2, which is for all the other uses. And there's no legend whatsoever in the tables. So those should be added consistent with the business and residential uses. So I'll leave you this.
Do we have this somewhere?
Yeah, I'll leave you this.
That would be helpful.
And then the final one, again, it does relate to the hearing this evening, though in the customers of the bylaw change, notwithstanding my comments earlier. I believe the board was very clear to town meeting that if a use isn't allowed in a district outside of mixed use, it's not allowed within a mixed use. So I'm asking that the board amend the definition of mixed use to add at the end, provided that each distinct land use itself is allowed by right or by special permit in the zoning district in which the structure is located. And structure refers back to mixed use, it's structure in the definition. And I do that because while you may understand it the same way I do, I'm not sure that staff do, I'm not sure future board members will, I'm not sure developers do. I think it's in everyone's interest to be very clear about that. So I'll leave these with you. I hope we can make these changes or propose them to the next town meeting, whether it's a special town meeting or regular town meeting, so that citizens don't have to get this.
Thanks.
We'll take under advisement. Thank you.
We have a couple of questions. We're ready to bring back our buildings, 4019 R Park Ave and Broadway. So we'd love to do it at the next board meeting if you're acceptable. So we were looking at lighting, we were looking at landscape, and we were looking at materials. So that date was, I think, August 12th. So are you amenable to having us submit, get out and set up?
We would, what's my point? I don't think we could do it yet with the advertising date. Unfortunately, that's not a problem. So September 9th would be the next possible time we could come.
We'll put you on as soon as we can. Have a conversation.
All right, great.
Yeah, no, the deadline was last week. Yeah.
We get copies of what was done before. I don't. What was reviewed before? Do we get copies of what was reviewed before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we just want the old.
I just want to go back over it and just feel all right.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I'll make sure.
We'll resubmit it all and
Yeah.
with the updated
Especially since at least
information.
one member wouldn't have it. So.
Yes, definitely.
we can do that. Yes, Mr. Seltzer.
You might be surprised I didn't mention the shadow studies in the previous section. I actually have done some more work. Some of it addresses things that David was asking, and I didn't want to take up the time with the other people here. But if you have any things you want to look at prior to your next meeting, I'll have those ready for you, just to provide some additional detail.
Why don't you just submit whatever you have for our consideration?
Okay, but I will be submitting something. I just thought that if anybody has particular things they want answered, I'd be happy to see if I can answer them in a presentation.
Well, let's see what the proponent provides in response to our request.
Yeah, we'll certainly consider whatever you have to provide. So
Okay.
if you want to submit it ahead of time, that's probably to everybody's advantage.
I'd be interested if the person who talked about his solar array, whether this was
I can do that.
Pete Clark, I don't know where he said he lived on Clark. I'd be interested in whether his solar array was shaded.
And that's the kind of thing I can answer for you.
But I don't, you'd have to.
But he
figure that
might
out.
be able to tell that from what they already provided.
Maybe.
He hadn't looked at it yet, so
Right.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
He needs to do that first.
Yeah. Yeah, I was interested in understanding the differences between the existing condition and what they're proposing.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they come back with. Thought it was productive. That being said, unless anyone else has comment, concern, question, or anything else, I'll take a motion.
I like based on Gene's comment. I think some communities have like solar access bylaws.
There's,
Yeah.
40A has a section that allows towns to adopt solar access
Yeah,
bylaws.
that's actually something I've considered.
It's where, I've been looking at it, yeah. Although I haven't found any town that's actually adopted it. But I haven't looked a lot. If you find them, let me know.
I'm not sure.
Let's not plant any seeds.
Can I motion adjourn?
Yes.
Motion adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.